So, on this episode, I have Dr. Ashwin Mehta, the founder of Methodology, an AI consulting company. Ashwin is a great AI leader, a strategist, and we've been talking about AI integration, risks when it comes to integrating AI, mitigating risks, using synthetic data to launch production ready AI tools, and a bunch of more cool stuff. So, I hope you're going to enjoy this podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I think now is the fifth episode of the podcast that I call Visionary Vibes, and today we have Dr. Ashwin Mehta and his company Methodology. By the way, first of all, really like the whole naming there, Methodology. Really, really smart. I wish I had that surname too. I would probably do exactly the same thing. But before, you were previously working at Deloitte,
So I've worked at a number of different companies. I've worked at a global
right?
pharmaceutical company in consulting, of course. I used to work for a company it was the UK funding body for research. So you might have heard of Innovate UK. It's part of
Yeah.
that group of companies. And yeah, I started my career doing bench chemistry. I was a chemist for a while.
Yeah.
So hard
Just
sciences.
just a bit of context really why I reached out because obviously you're posting a bunch of cool stuff really, but in these kind of like podcasts I really want to talk to more and more people from the AI space, directly, because obviously you have a lot of people who talk about AI, but then it's kind of like the expectation and the reality is so different. And when I've seen some of your previous consulting experience and you've recently set up your own business, I think it'll be really really good to kind of like discuss obviously what you're doing and also understand just in general, I guess, like how everything's going. Because again, like I said previously, there's this sort of expectation how you think the AI market, works and what is happening, but also then there's the reality. So I
Yeah.
think really to get started, if you could kind of like, give a bit of a context, really, what you focus on currently, what industries are you focusing on at the moment, that would be really good to know.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are kind of two sides to this. One is the what am I doing with clients and where am I focusing the industry? And the other side of this is the AI revolution is the great leveler. So we have all of the potential capabilities that we can use to develop a business. We've
Mhm.
probably heard the talking points around a unicorn can be built by one
Yeah,
person who's
one
really good at
person.
AI. So I've been taking that kind of approach with my business as well.
Do
Business
you
has
think
been
that's
around for three
doable?
years.
One person.
I don't know. I mean, it depends on what you do. So for me, running a consulting business, I have the strategy, use case, prioritization, benefits case side of things that I do with companies, but I also have the development, the workflow, the making sense of the market, getting data strategy right. So this is the spread of things that I do, and AI can be used in various aspects of this. Would I say I mean, I did have the ambition at the start of the year, which was, when was this, January time? I was thinking I want to scale to roughly a 50 headcount business with no people. Where did I get to? I got to probably about 28 or 30 before
Right.
I decided that I need a person. And there are many reasons for needing a person, but I wanted to have a little bit of support with things that I had automated or created agentic workflows to the max. So things like marketing, for example, I had to some degree automated or put AI into about 80 or 90% of what I was doing in the marketing space. And I wanted that additional 10%. The same with sales. I think sales, in terms of qualifying inbound, a lot of that can be done with digital sales development representatives, SDRs, but can you do the outreach? Possibly
Yeah.
not. Can you have that human touch? Possibly not. So there are bits where you need people. And I'm kind of testing the ground on a lot of that stuff, but I'm doing that internally. So when you ask the question, what am I doing in the client space? I think it's probably equally important to say what I'm doing in the
Yeah.
development of my own business as well. And
But
partly that's because when I have the client conversations are very different because with clients, big clients and small clients, but if they've been around for longer than 3 or 4 years, the chances are they have legacy systems,
yeah.
legacy skills, legacy processes. So it's not as simple as just setting something up from scratch and making it run. You have to also cope with the life cycle of the old things that maybe you need to change. So
Yeah.
these are different. But
But
the spread is pretty much across every vertical.
Yeah, but would you say, like, what's your North Star really now with methodology? Again, I just love the name, first of all, but would you say it's just, ideal scenarios, you obviously making a lot of money, many products, many clients, and that's it? Okay, maybe like another person or two, or are you actually thinking about scaling and, being a, 10, 20, 30 people? What do you think is the best kind of like is best for you?
So I want to make 2 points there. So the first point is I want to get away from this idea, and not only in this conversation, but across the entirety of the industry. If we're going to do this properly, we need to get away from the idea of headcount being a good measure of productivity.
Mm,
Same with day rates. Day rates are no longer a good measure of output. So these kind of things need to go. But the ambition really is to scale in the areas that I want to scale. Now, for me, I'm interested usually in building things, building the new thing, figuring out if it works, trying to push the boundaries. So one of the things I've been looking at is I think that businesses have a lot of, let's say, support services. So these support services could be sales, marketing, could be communications, could be learning, could be HR,
hmm
finance, IT, all of these things to some degree can have automation, agentic workflow, agentic capability within them. How much of that can be done in a box? So you basically have an input, click a button, you've got a lot of configuration. Some of it will be agentic, some of it will be automation. And then you get the output, and you get the output in a way that frees the human being from the repetitive. How much of that can we do? So one of the things I'm very interested in at the moment, and I'm building a lot of these things, is effectively department in a box. Can we have a full business that is scalable to the nth degree by leveraging the tech that we have? Because if we can, then that it moves towards this idea of multi-agent frameworks just a little bit.
Yeah,
But if we can do that, then it drastically changes what can be done with human capability. And it
yeah,
also drastically changes what jobs look like, what work looks like in the future, and what a department structure needs to be in a business. So for me, the kind of North Star, personally, and the North Star for the business, they might be slightly different. But the North Star for me personally is how much can we disrupt our current way of thinking and move towards a different concept of value in the future. That's the thing that interests me.
mm,
From a business perspective, it's really about how can we make maximum impact in our clients for the things that they want to do. Because the things that they want to do could be that they've wanted to do something for a long time, but it wasn't possible in terms of time, trouble, money, resource. Can we get them to that outcome in a way that leverages tech? And the other side of it might be things like efficiency. So how can we get to the outcome in a way that is efficient, standardized, and scalable? So
yeah.
these kinds of things are very interesting. Would I
I
say
th
it's a revenue play necessarily? I don't know. It's probably more of an interest play at this point.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I think kind of like okay, then I'm really curious here, genuinely. That framework works if you're assessing things, when it comes to your business, right? But I'm
Yep.
sure when you talk to other businesses, they are still they still have this kind of very often conservative thinking, or just they're really
Okay.
in this sort of box where they compare, cool, we've got 20 people, we're doing this. So whenever
Yep.
you come, like I asked you the question at the beginning, whenever you come to those clients, they say, okay, is it going to be now 16 people doing this, right? So very often it's really hard to persuade them that it's actually not about the head count. It's actually more about the output and what you can actually achieve. So
Yep.
I think, do you often struggle? Okay, I get your point there, but do you often struggle with this when you go to clients and discuss sort of the whole output bit instead of just focusing on the head count? Because what I understood is you're trying to get totally away, kind of like ideologically, from the whole
Yep.
head count idea, because then you're really comparing sort of, you're still doing the old way, really. You're still following the old way, right? Whereas what you're saying is let's actually focus on the output instead of like talking about people at all.
Let's talk about value. And the question that you're asking is it difficult to persuade clients? So I guess the trite answer is I don't try and persuade clients
Mm,
because every client has a different set of problems that they're trying to solve. and they have a different set of solutions that will help them with getting value or getting outcomes. So it's not really about persuading, it's about figuring out what the problems are, putting a solid benefits case against a solid solution case, and then helping them on a roadmap to achieve whatever transformation they need. So it's not necessarily about persuasion into my ideology, it's about doing the right thing for them. So it's a slightly different thing.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is not necessarily persuasion, but very often, depending on the client and the industry, you have to use the right words to kind of like
Yep.
be that bridge between, sort of taking them from this old, legacy system to this whole new way, new approach, new thinking. And very often you can't just be like, right, let's cut it off here, and this is the new thing, right? So very often you have to be very careful with terminology, with the words that you're using. And you absolutely
Uh,
agree, you can't persuade. But the point I'm trying to make here is I still very often find that I just have to accept the fact that I've got to stick to their terminology, meaning that we still do the head count, we still,
yeah.
stick to their KPIs and their processes, rather than saying, okay, guys, like this is how we can do it. This is a totally new process. Very often I feel they just get lost in all of that. I'll give you a very specific example, and maybe I would love to hear your kind of like feedback on
Right.
this. So I was talking to a big marketing agency last week, and basically we're talking about,
Yeah.
again, output, right? We're talking about output that once you build these systems, basically knowledge bases, right? You basically would need only one person to use the knowledge base, and then that client could get this output. And then the marketing client goes, well, but if I have 10 people on a project, that creates this a bit of a perception that this is a very valuable project, that this is a very difficult project. So
Fair.
if we now only go to one person, it's like, Vlad, I get it. Our output could be 3x and our savings could be 15x. But because we now have only one person, our clients, that marketing agency's clients, even though the output could be even better, will start actually thinking that it's not worth it, because you see where I'm going. So what
I
do
see
you
where you're
think
going.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you a response to that, right? And the response is that agencies that are leveraging this kind of thing, if you're still pricing yourself in the old way, then of course clients are going to question value, because but they're effectively buying headcount. So it's a difference in positioning. What are you actually selling? Now, the headcount point, I made it earlier in this conversation. It's one of many ways to measure value. Actually, it's not a way to measure value at all, but it's one of many ways to measure a thing. You can have time, you can have cost, you can have headcount, you can have throughput, you can have widgets produced, right? You can have data throughput, you can have number of agentic activations, you can have number of assistants used, you can have volume of knowledge base, you can have all of these different things that you can track as metrics, and it becomes more complicated than just simply saying we have bottoms on seats doing things for 8 hours a
Mm,
day. And that's why it becomes a more nuanced conversation. Now, what you're saying is different clients will value different things. That's true. But what they're mostly going to value is output against price point. If your price point is a function of headcount, then of course they're going to question it if your only way of demonstrating that is staffing, right? And this is a time and materials kind of conversation, and it's effectively a consulting model conversation. So how do you demonstrate value is really the question that you're going down. How do you demonstrate value when you only have one person? Well, if that one person is able to produce the things at a rate of 10 people, that's a different conversation. But it doesn't mean that your price point needs to be the price point of 10 people. The price point should be a function of the attributes, the artifacts, the workflows, the technology that you've developed to get to that point, the expertise that was required, and the headcount that is required to maintain that. So it's a different pricing model, right? Have you ever
yeah.
thought about the pricing model and how that changes?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think also though, there's because people are very, subjective always. I'll give you a very specific example. So when someone breaks, something is broken at home, you call a person, handyman,
Uh,
he comes, fixes that, literally, takes him like 2 minutes and says, okay, great, that's gonna be 80 quid, or like 150. And you go,
uh,
mate, that was literally just 2 minutes of your time, right? And even
yep,
though I was paying for a result, obviously, I don't want him to be at home spending hours and just being here, right? I do still think that over the next, 5, 10 years, we're still going to be really subjective when it comes to
I
assessing
know.
these outputs and quality. Because again, if I still doubt if that handyman is worth it, who's a human being, physical, offline,
Yeah,
I can literally see it, that fixed, and I still sometimes subjectively, assess and sort of doubt it whether it was worth it or not, right?
yeah,
So, and when it comes to the whole AI world, AI agents, I think the fact that we can't see what's happening really in the back end, behind the background, is again going to be a bit of a, I think let's call it a marketing or sales barrier, really, when it comes to
yeah,
either adoption of AI or just using it. Again, this is just my
yeah,
what
yeah.
my thoughts as I talk to more and more people, and I can definitely see how when it comes to, especially if it's like something simple and the bot is can do it now immediately, people go,
Yeah.
still don't believe it. Like, is it worth it?
Yeah. So this is not a debate that we're going to solve today, but it's good to have the conversation, right? Now, in the example that you just gave, you got a plumber shows up, looks at the problem, eyeballs it once, fixes the problem, walks off, and it took 2 minutes. What are you paying for? Are you actually paying for his time on site or her time on site, or are you paying for the 25 years of experience that it took them to get to the point where they can take one look at the problem and know exactly what it is? And this debate happens with that kind of work all the time. Why should you pay for something that you don't think is worth it? Well, fine. Keep the leak going and see what water damage costs, right?
Yeah.
So you have all of these different ways to slice this, right? And the same is going to play out in the AI space, of course. And partly that's because nearly everything that you see online, nearly all of the media hype, most of the armchair experts that you see on LinkedIn are peddling things like, with no coding experience and no expertise and no skills, you can click this button and get your
Yeah.
magical dreams will come true in no time. And it's garbage, right? Because when was the last? I mean, look at this. Look on the wall, right? I've got all of these fantastic Ibanez RG guitars, right?
That's
I'm
really
not
cool.
sponsored by Ibanez. Ibanez, if you're watching this, sponsor me. I love these,
They
right?
should.
But anyway, but I've got these. Now, the first time I picked up one of these when I was 14 or something, was I shredding away at Wembley? I'm still not, but was I able to play a solo? No, it took time, it took effort, it took years of practice. As Brian Adams said, I played until my fingers bled, right? These
Mhm.
things take time. First time you pick up a football on the street and you're playing with your mates, are you scoring? Are you putting it in the back of the net at Wembley? No, you're not. So these things take drills, they take practice, they take time. And there's this unrealistic expectation in the AI world, not even in the AI world, because people are doing these things, they know it takes time. But there's an unrealistic expectation on social media that with no experience, with no skills, with no work, you can get an outcome. And I think that's, generally speaking, an error. So this shines a very different light on what is it that you're actually paying for. And
Mm.
generally speaking, you'll be paying for the time and effort people have put in to gain expertise, to be able to build things, to be able to go back and forth and debug things, to make sure that things work, to make sure that things are scalable, to make sure that they have the right expertise, that they can do the investigation, they can do the discovery, they can ensure interoperability. These things are the expertise that you would pay for. And then you have to consider, well, and I do this sometimes myself. If I can have a half an hour conversation with a company and say, I know exactly what your problem statement is, you're going to pay less for that than someone who's going to take a week to get to the same answer? Or
Yeah.
you're going to pay more? Do you value time? Or do you value expertise? Or do you value the price point?
Yeah.
These conversations are going to be different for every company. But it
Mm.
doesn't mean we shouldn't have the conversations. But these are the tricky things that are going to play out in the industry.
Yeah. I think part of the problem really is obviously on LinkedIn, you see now like these AI agents every single day, right? Like you go, comment this, and you get this AI agent, do this, get this AI agent. So there's a bit of this perception that it's really easy to build them, which is partially true, to make it very clear. It
Right.
is true. The barriers are really obviously low, but it does create this a bit of a situation where everyone thinks, okay, I'm just going to spend 2 hours, build that, and there we go. We got an agent that's going to,
Yeah.
automatically work and drive my business and grow it, and so on and so on. So, and this is why I think, back to our conversation about sort of output, the reason why people are very subjective when it comes to assessing and sort of putting a number essentially on those AI agents is because they think,
Go on.
if that's so easy to build, let's say 3 hours, I know I'm getting a great output, but because it's so easy to build, there's no way I'm going to pay you whatever because I think that it is so, so easy. So I think what I'm trying to say, I think the market has
Okay.
really, the technology and the market has to mature um,
Yeah.
until people start understanding what you were just trying to really explain there. That at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it comes down to the skill, the time, and your expertise. Because even now, with all of the AI agents, I know a lot of people who obviously, downloaded them or installed and tried to really use them in the business, and they go, yeah, but it's not really there. It's like the 1% improvement. You constantly need
Yeah.
to keep tweaking, keep improving. And I think, again, people will actually really soon understand that if you actually have a, let's say, AI agent that really works well and it's specifically tailored to your business needs, it is most likely happening because someone actually had the time and the expertise to build it. Like, there's no way you
Yeah.
can just randomly download something from LinkedIn and then hope that that AI agent is actually tailored to your business needs. That's just the reality. I think it can work for simple stuff, right? Generate this, generate that. But I think people are slowly, understanding that, yeah, like what you said, it takes time to understand
Uh,
and all the expertise. Are you seeing the same problem or kind of like challenge, when it comes to
so
your
I
clients?
think what you're talking about is these posts on LinkedIn that have recently started that have been going on Instagram for best part of 6 months because Instagram's way ahead of LinkedIn when it comes to stuff like this. And those are the I built this automation in N8N. Just comment automation below, and you can download my free thing, right? And the problem with that is I commented on one a while ago, which was meant to be some guy, and I can't even remember who it was now, but it said my problem statement was I had too many WhatsApp messages, so I built this agent, and it was basically an automation that pulled from Slack and posted back to Slack. It's like, where's your WhatsApp node? If your problem statement is WhatsApp, where's your WhatsApp node? It's such simple stuff, and yet loads of likes, loads of comments about downloading their thing. And the thing that makes me skeptical about some of this is skeptical and hopeful at the same time. Because if 10% of the people who download these things, even 10%, if they were to download something and be able to figure out simply that they need to open up a node, they need to link an API key, an ID, and a secret. They need to find that in whatever platform they're using. They need to populate or pay for credits or tokens or whatever the platform is using for payment. And they need to link those things up in a way that it actually works, because you can't just download a
Yeah,
template and have it linked to nothing.
exactly. Yeah.
So if 10% of people understand that, download the template, and manage to hook it up to a couple of third-party systems in a way that is secured, does have tokens or credits behind it, and that actually works, that's a positive thing, because people are then learning about the principles of automation, they're learning about the principles of
Yeah.
APIs, they're learning about the principles of connecting third-party applications to workflows. So all of that stuff is good. The hesitation that I have is when you get a lot of folks who are downloading this just so they can have a pretty picture, and then they can show it to their mates or show it to their leadership and say, look, we can do automations too. And then what happens with companies is, when you have an automation, it doesn't work. And then a bunch of people will say, well, you know what, this didn't work, so let's not look at automations. Let's think about something else. Let's go and pay a lot of money to a SaaS provider, who, software as a service, who will do this stuff out of the box, and therefore we're not going to look at bespoke automation. And I think that's a big mistake, because most of the future of nearly any organization is going to depend on their ability to retrieve their data, their ability to structure automations and workflows, and their ability to use agents. And if they whole scale reject one of these concepts because somebody did it badly, then that's not really helping their value chain. It's not helping them be competitive. And that's a big danger. And we've seen this many, many times with software before. Take the e-learning market, for example. You had 15 years of really poor quality click-through text on a screen e-learning. And now people say, well, digital learning, we don't want to do it. Really? Because all digital learning is bad because you had one, negative prior experience. And we're in that same kind of danger zone with these kinds of, cowboy armchair experts on LinkedIn saying, download my automation. And the worst part of it is, high horse, I'm going to get on the high horse now. The worst part of all of this is I see people who are renowned thought leaders, armchair experts, people who get up and they have an opinion, and they're commenting automation on some of these posts. Go learn it, right? Go build something for yourself. It's not that difficult. As you've said, the barrier to entry is lower than it's ever been. And I don't think there's any excuse for just learning some of the stuff.
Yeah. I think the problem in the market right now is, again, and I think the technology in the market will mature, but the fact that a lot of it is just purely driven really by sales and marketing. So they're trying to sell you something quickly, right? It's like, do this and get this. Again, it creates a bit of a perception that all of this is so easy, when in reality, it's like saying, okay, pick up a camera, click on this button, and now you're a great photographer. And I think that's exactly what's happening there. Instead of, talking about, this and that and all of the angles and the, all of the other 30, 40, factors you need to consider if you want to become a pro, really. And I think that's again, the problem, which again, I want to really, go back to the whole output thing. I think, and I don't know if you agree, the next probably a year or two, because of this market, essentially, where people think it's that easy, we're still going to have to deal with clients and partners who will basically, I mean, you're right, we don't persuade anyone, that's true, but we'd still have to say, okay, it's actually a lot more nuanced than people just post on LinkedIn and say, download it and use it. And I think we'll just have to, it is what it is, really. Do you think,
so?
Or maybe your clients are different. Maybe they, your clients are a lot more knowledgeable when it comes to AI agents, or what's your take on this?
So I have a range of clients, and some of them, for some of them, it's their first time and they need guidance, and that's why they come to me. For some of them, they're really far along in their innovation strategy and they put a lot of investment into these things, and so they need something slightly different. And the whole range of clients really should be able to have access to expertise. So that's a good thing. I think the problem that we'll start to see in the future is where you have downloaded automations, downloaded workflows that have been taken from somewhere like LinkedIn or Instagram. They've been implemented in some way that's not quite right. They've been added to in some way that doesn't really have much expertise or knowledge behind it because we perceive it to be so easy. And then you're going to have issues, and those issues might be genuine cybersecurity issues. They may be just broken system issues. And then we'll be in the situation where most of what we do, the people who know how to build things, we're going to be fixing broken things. And that's always going to be... Well, it's always going to be a judgment call, right? Because the judgment call is going to be, well, you've got this thing. Is it easier to scrap it and start from scratch? And that's just the workflow question. The tricky thing we haven't discussed is you download an automation from pretty much anywhere. It needs to link to something. And I don't know how you can really get sustainable competitive advantage without retrieval, without a vector store, without some method of leveraging your data in the thing that you do. Because otherwise it's not special. It's just whatever everybody else does. So
I think just to interrupt here, I think there's a difference between like on automation essentially, which is pretty much really universal, standardized. It's like let's pretend you send a WhatsApp message and then the email is sent automatically. That type of automation actually can work for everyone, right? Because if you're using
that's an
WhatsApp,
efficiency play,
and then Gmail, but I think people are trying to essentially sugarcoat that and say that's actually an AI agent, and
it's not.
It's not. It's going to be like a simple automation. And
Yeah.
I think that's, like you said, that's the problem. Because if we're talking about proper systems, proper AI agents, most likely they have to be connected with some external, databases, external,
Yeah.
third-party services that you're using. And that's where the problem is really that, yeah,
But,
cybersecurity and stuff like that. And it's also interesting, like you just said, is very often it's actually easier and cheaper to build something from scratch than actually build
yeah.
on top of that, because we've already had cases where a
Okay.
client comes and says, right, I've got this AI agent, just got it from somewhere, can't you just build it on top because it's there, can't you just add this
Okay.
one more feature? And we go, and then there could be many issues. It's like either
Mm.
the framework is different and not really compatible with what their business is currently using, or we can't really look into it and figure out, okay, how are we actually going to build it? Because very often reverse engineering the actual architecture and solution
Yeah.
might be tricky. So, and actually it creates a bit of a problem really, where the client thinks actually there's only just a tiny bit of work really to add this on top, and you go, actually not. There's a lot of work because we got to
Uh,
rebuild this, change this. And I agree. So what's your take on this? Would you say, like, because obviously it's a good and a bad thing that so much is happening on LinkedIn, right? That people are talking about AI agents and AI overall, that creates essentially the demand. Let's be honest there. But
yeah.
then very often, if especially people have had a bad experience, you might come to that client and say, actually, you need to rebuild this. So have
Uh,
you already had, I don't know, some situations or sort of cases like that where you had to essentially explain to the client that what they think is not actually true?
so I've had a variety of experiences, and I'll give you probably three. So, and this isn't an AI problem, by the way. This is just a business problem. I had one client, and this is going back a couple of years now. I had one client that had engaged a third party company, different company, who were operating a struggling business, and they decided to pivot into the strategy space. Didn't know anything about strategy. They
Hmm.
didn't know what they were doing. They engaged with this client and did a very, very bad job, to the point where I got on the call with this client, and that client said, we can't use the word strategy in our company, because if we say we're going to do a strategy project, nobody will buy into it. We won't get budget because that company over there did such a bad job. We actually
Mm.
can't even use the word, right? So that's one thing. Second example is I had a client who was they'd been using a bunch of tools in Excel and various related technologies, the baseline kind of Microsoft technologies for many years to deliver client value, and that's a good thing. That's what they were doing. But over time, the person who had developed it was no longer around. They moved on. They retired. They whatever it is. So now you've got something that needs to be rebuilt from scratch. Now, there was a hesitance because this was something that worked previously, and why can't it just work now? The amount of work that it takes to undo a bunch of macros and to rebuild a bunch of pivots and to all do all of this stuff, you might as well just build nowadays.
Yeah.
Just build a software product from scratch, and it would
Yeah.
be more stable. It would be robust. So you've got these various things, and the point I'm making there is you have negative prior experience causes problems in clients in how they talk about things, what they can sell internally, how their leadership and how their stakeholders perceive things. And the other thing is effectively around sunk cost. So we had this solution for many years, and we just don't want to we just don't want to let go of it. We want to keep it as long as we can. So can we just pump lots and lots and lots of money into fixing this when we know it would be a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the time to rebuild this into something that's modern, that's scalable, that's secure?
Yeah.
These problems are always going to exist, and I don't know exactly what we can do about it. But the kind of LinkedIn armchair expert piece, and I'm deliberately using that term because I don't think very highly of these folks, but these folks are giving opinions. Now, I'm all for giving opinions and having the conversation, but I think it's difficult for clients to be able to discriminate between somebody who's standing up and giving loud opinions
Mm.
and somebody who has opinions but also can follow through with scalable and robust technical development. It's fine to say you should go that way, but you need somebody who's going to take you there, right?
Yeah.
And if the person doesn't know anything, they say go that way, and you actually need to go that way, then it becomes a problem. And it becomes a problem if you've already gone 4 miles down the road that way, and now you need to recover and come back. So it's that discrimination kind of discriminatory capability that we need in the market.
Yeah, and I agree. It's not an AI
seeing.
issue. It's not an AI issue, really. It's more of a management, sort of efficiency, I guess, issue. But anyone watching us, will obviously think that we are biased. But what would you say? Let's pretend, because I've seen this happening many times now. So obviously, starting from 2022, since ChatGPT was rolled out,
Bye.
a lot of the companies had a lot of, these AI or innovation budgets, right? And then 2 years in now, a lot of those projects failed. It came across some number. I think that was something like 80% of AI projects failed.
Yep.
Like let's pretend, like, forget that, people not hiring us, right? What would you say is the best way to go about it when you are I don't know, chief innovation officer, whatever it is, right? Like change, innovation, growth, position, something, some failed AI project internally. What's the best way you reckon to go about it? Because I'm sure you've seen some of the companies, doing something, and if it was the first try, might have been something unsuccessful, but then there was a second go and that was successful. So what would you say is a good framework to go about it? Again, going back to our conversation, when you download something, you try and you think it works, then it fails. You've built a bunch of useless stuff on top of that. So what's the way to reverse engineer it, undo it, and then, any thoughts on this?
Yeah. 2 thoughts, prevention and cure, right? So let's talk about prevention first. Prevention first is have a tangible use case, something you can measure, and have a good technology problem fit. That needs to be in place before you go and pilot something. And then failure, it could be lessons learned, it could be something that you use as a valuable mechanism to move forward. That's okay. But as long as you've done your due diligence and you're working with technologies or suppliers that have the capability to do the things that you need to do, it's all good. But that stuff needs to be part of the prevention to prevent this kind of failure.
But when you say prevent, do you mean like stop using that thing that you already have in the business?
No,
what
I mean preventing the situation, because the situation is you've failed so badly that you need to effectively turn around your entire strategy, because you either picked a provider who couldn't do something, or you've messed up so badly that nobody in your organization wants to touch this stuff. That's the catastrophic failure. The first thing is prevent that from happening by doing things iteratively, by doing things with a problem first view, matching the solution to problems, and making sure that your technology development, piloting, and all of that is iterative with the right view. You've got some success criteria. You've got some trigger points for cutting the project. Do it in a measured way, basically, and select your suppliers so that they can actually do something rather than just talk about it. This is all in the prevention category. Prevent that catastrophic failure from happening. In the cure side of things, because what you're saying is something has gone badly wrong and we need to turn it around and we need to repivot and we need to go forth into the AI revolution, sailing on the sea of technology with a captain rather than without a captain, right? We need to do that. How are we going to do it? And the first thing is always going to be figure out what went so catastrophically wrong in the first place. How bad is the damage? What do you need to mitigate? Are we in a situation where nobody in your entire company is going to even enter a conversation with the words AI or automation without leaving in disgust, right? Because if that's where you are, then
because
really
there's that massive scar already.
If that's
AI
where you are,
scar.
you need an education program to try and fix this, change management program, something that's more on the soft side, on the people side, to try and change hearts and minds. If it's a technology issue where you say you've built basically a useless automation and then you built an entire stack of things on that, then unfortunately that's so far down the road of wasted investment that you might have to take one of two actions. One is bring in a supplier or train up an in-house team or whatever it is to undo all of that stuff and fix it. it might be quicker just to scrap it and build it from scratch. Being comfortable with sunk cost is going to have to be a thing in this space. And you may want to revisit the build versus buy dynamic. So is there something in the market, because the market is changing every day? Is there something in the market that off the shelf will do the thing that you need it to do, whilst allowing you to gracefully decommission the thing that's no longer working? So there are quite a few options in that space.
But one of the main things I kind of like understood is, let's say someone built something, right, and they messed up, right, and then what you're saying, it's important for the company not to just straight away jump into the second build, but actually, you know, take the time, sort of, let's call it the transition phase, right? Whatever it means, really. The transition phase to sort of go from acknowledging, accepting, preventing, understanding probably, you know, what's gone wrong, and only then starting essentially to figure out how to go about this sort of second build. Is that how you see this?
Yes, it needs to be. These things need to be done in the way that probably you and I have said so many years that technology projects should be done. You don't just, and this is a key thing. Now that I'm saying this, I'm kind of reflecting. This is a key thing in the AI space. We tend to jump in and say, we're just going to build this thing.
Well, that's why I asked this question, really.
And, you know, historically, tech projects have never worked like this. Tech projects have nearly always had we're going to solve for this problem. We're going to do it with this kind of stack. We're going to test it out. We're going to survey the market. We're going to do some kind of pilots or use cases. We're going to get a bunch of stakeholders on board. We're going to think about governance. We're going to think about contracting. We're going to think about the platforms we use. We're going to develop something iteratively and see what we can measure to figure out if it solves that problem. And we've kind of always done this. So in the AI space, it's kind of weird that we just go, you know what, let's just build it. FOMO is a strategy. Yeah. We're just going to do it. Hey, we want to do AI, right? Let's just go off and do it. So taking that measured approach is absolutely the way to go.
Yeah, and I actually absolutely agree. You know, the barriers are so low that we can build something like literally instantly today, right? Yeah. But then also, question for you, because we also work in healthcare, and I've seen that you've been working for a very long time at the Medical Research Institute, right? So I'm sure there's a lot of barriers and regulations when it comes to medical and healthcare stuff, right? So my bigger point, is there's some industries, like, I don't know, I don't have an example right now, but there's some industries where you can actually build something today and just test it, you know, just test it here and there, and that's fine, even if something goes wrong, slightly wrong, right? But then there's some industries like healthcare where, to be honest, you don't really have a second chance, right? So how do you go about really balancing, you know, this sort of FOMO where let's build something today, but then also understanding that, but actually we've got tons of regulations, tons of things that we actually have to consider before we even build something. Because back to what we were just discussing now, a lot of the businesses are actually by default regulated. You know, some of the big spaces, you know, fintech, healthcare, insurance, those are the really, you know, regulated spaces. So they can't mess up things, to keep it simple. So what's your take really then on, and you know, your experience as well here, on where's this balance between innovation and building today, let's get going, and being conservative enough to actually, you know, be smart and see the bigger picture to prevent, you know, all of these risks potentially?
So risk mitigation and innovation have to be balanced in every organization, because it's got to meet your risk appetite, right? Whatever you do has to meet your risk appetite. And that's the way it goes for every business. Now, that's going to mean a balance of governance and experimentation. Governance in most organizations, particularly if they're heavily regulated, are going to have to follow a certain path. Now, one thing I don't see this generally in the market, but I'd like to see it, is that heavily regulated businesses will tend to say, no AI at all, we're not going to use it. And to me, that's a bad thing. And the reason that's a bad thing is it kind of means that you don't trust the organization to understand what is and is not sensitive data. Because we could, right now, probably the two of us on this call, could go off and build an agentic workflow that uses synthetic data. None of it's real. We would be able to test out the entirety of the workflow. We'd be able to test out the outputs, figure out if it needs tweaking, figure out if it needs additional prompting or it needs additional code, figure out how the database is working, how retrieval is working, if we need to adjust the temperature. All of these things we could figure out using synthetic data. And we would understand that because it's synthetic data, it really doesn't have the same security requirements as if it was real health data, personal data, commercial data. It doesn't have those attributes. So taking that kind of approach means that you can test things out in a way that's pragmatic and suits your risk appetite. And I'm not seeing much of this in the market. I'm seeing either a blanket yes or a blanket no.
I think it's because there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. Like, imagine, we go to some healthcare company now, and we worked with a couple of healthcare companies. And to be honest, it's mostly you work on this stuff if they come to you and say, right, we're actually interested, we want to do it. Whereas I actually know a lot of businesses where we know the opportunity is there. And if we did something like you said, we simulated, and built a real AI agent or some workflow, it will work for sure, but we don't want to build it just to then go on and persuade the business that actually this could work. Because funny enough, a lot of the clients or potential clients, the strongest use cases are often in those businesses that will never even hire us in the first place. They will just think, oh, we don't need AI, So I find it's a bit of a paradox, really.
So if I back the question back to you, though, right? So when a client engages you, they want to do it, but they have sensitive data. Would you take the approach of we're going to separate the project into the sensitivity of data, building the working thing, maybe with synthetic data, and then once we're satisfied with the outcomes, we will, in a siloed, secure environment, link up the sensitive data to an already working workflow? Or would you just build the whole thing using sensitive data? Because those are two different approaches, right?
To be honest, in most cases, when we've had sensitive data, we basically just obfuscate data. So we've never really synthesized any data like you just mentioned. But I do think it's a better approach, to be just very honest with you. I think it's a better approach and really could unlock a lot of new use cases and potential projects really, where you just come up with your own random data. And but actually, no, we've done that. We've done that once. So I'll give you an example. We worked with an art company, and we were thinking about basically an AI agent that we would upload artworks. It would then analyze whatever is, whether it's apples or oranges, there. Then it goes and collects 10, 15 different parameters, whether it's the year, the price, the location, stuff like that, really. So then the agent goes on, I'm obviously simplifying it, and then the agent goes on and says, actually, people love apples and blue sky and trees based on the data that you've sent us. So in that case, this was one of the examples where we haven't even pitched that to the client, so they never even came to us and said that's what we need. But we just used AI essentially to generate those 100 fake artworks and artists to then use that data. We put that into that AI agent, and then we get those results. So actually, we've done that once. I, though, see this more as a pre-sales tool at the moment, to be just transparent with you. Because I'm actually keen to try, at some point, what you said, basically, for the real production-ready app, use some fake data as well. The problem that I see is a client would come in and say, yeah, that's fake data, but remember that our database is very unique, and it's not really about the data itself. It's about, we do this, I don't know, AWS, and then this is MongoDB. So I'm just trying to think through this, really. It's not just probably about the data, but also about the context in which that data, whether it's a database, a specific cloud or something like that. Yeah. So,
not to get too consulting about this, but I think if you had a client that was using Mongo and AWS and they had a database, then you would simulate that, put your synthetic data into something that's very similar, hook that up to your workflow, and then when you're satisfied, you could think about making the switch, because making that switch from one database to another is trivial, right? So I think there are ways, and I agree on the pre-sales thing. It's good for demos, and it's good for, but it's also good when you're building something to think about how you use synthetic data to mitigate risk in the build, because
I
it's
agree.
one of many tools that we have, right?
Have you done that? Like, have you built tools with
Yeah.
synthetic data?
Nearly always, I'll do the first trial POC with synthetic data that mirrors the the fields and the structure of what the reality should be. Because
Interesting.
generally speaking, I don't, as much as it's as much as data is a vital part of AI projects. I think the more you can separate the project from having to work with sensitive data, the more you can control the risk of that project. So every project is different, and
Mm.
but usually the data piece is the most sensitive piece.
Yeah. What we usually ask for is basically data, like data samples that we can use. And to be
Yep.
honest with you, we've yet never had a case where they would say, no, we can't give you any data. Usually there's something they can pass on. But
Yep.
I'll definitely try this at some point because I'm actually even curious. I absolutely agree with what you say because it doesn't matter whether it actually says Vlad or Ashwin, when it comes
Yeah.
to the name, it's just a parameter really. But
Uh,
what's interesting to see is I feel like some of the clients could easily still devalue the work by saying, "Oh yeah, it's fake data." You know, that's a
yeah, but
it's like a
I,
test
I,
stage.
I think you've got to be upfront with why you're doing it, because either you're doing it to simulate, to say this is a pre-sales thing, we're demonstrating a proof of concept, or
Mm,
you're doing it to mitigate the risk within a project of building something. So as long as you're clear on why you're doing it, what the assumptions are, and what the bridging stage would be. So at some point you're going to link real data in the place of synthetic data. Why are you doing that? What are the things that you'll need to test when you do that? How is it going to work? Is there a migration step? Is there a decommissioning step? All of these things you need to be upfront with them, right? But I think as long as you're doing that and you've got legitimate reasons for using synthetic data, then why wouldn't you do it?
so I think also actually that could work for anyone who's building anything internally, right? They could
Uh,
simulate, duplicate any of the databases, data structure,
yeah,
and then just basically fill it up with fake data, and then build a POC based on that, right? Rather than building
yep,
a production ready AI solution that is then already connected to the real databases. I've never thought
yeah.
of that, to be honest with you, but I think even as I said, like I think even internally, business can do that, and
Mhm.
I really don't see that. I don't know why. It's actually such a simple idea, but
This is we used to do this in academia, right? So I've got a PhD. I've done data based research before, and yeah, why wouldn't you use synthetic data, particularly at scale? If you're doing big data
mm,
stuff, then synthetic data is part of the tool set that you have, right?
yeah, yeah. No, that's something definitely I'm going to try at some point. I'm just worried about clients going on and saying that, oh, it's just fake data, it's not real, meaning that it's not a real project, but it's more of a test slash fake project. I think that's the thing I'm worried
It's
about,
part
really.
of it, though, right? It's part of reaching an end goal is to try things, to do proof of concepts, to do pilots, and it's part of that iterative evolution towards eventually getting something that you can push to production. Why would you go off and do DevOps on something if you've not
Mm.
assured that it works as a POC? So you've got these stages, right?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think me and you can keep, discussing this for, hours and hours,
Forever.
really, all those, yeah, those, but it's interesting because, we're pretty much in a similar space. I would say we still
Uh,
do different things, but, we're
yeah.
in the same space. So I think what would be really valuable if you could really, based on your experience, of course, sum up what would you say is the right way to go about integrating AI, into your company, whether it's a, I don't know, 20, 30-year-old business, or I don't know, this for 100 years, or it's a new startup, really. I know it's a very abstract question, I understand, but what would you say are some of the important things to consider? And yeah,
Yeah, I'll break this down to, I guess, 3 steps. Let's see how many there are when I finish. So the first step is have these tangible problem statements. So there's a thing that I'm doing, and I want to be able to either automate that or use AI. Let's not necessarily just use the term AI, but I want to somehow make it better with technology, and that could be anything. I want to change the way my marketing function works, and I want to be able to post on social media more. I want to change the way my recruitment function works. I want to streamline how employees access HR policies. I want to change the way financial reporting happens and how we report to our investors. There are so many different things that pretty much any business can look at. And if you're a big enough business that you've got all of these different departments, then you want to have a list of 20, 25 things that are measurable, tangible things that you can say, we want to make that thing better using technology, magic, whatever term we're going to use. And then you need to figure out if there's a solution out there that works for you. And what do? We go on Google, we go on ChatGPT, we ask the question, is there a solution that looks at AI for HR or whatever it is that you're looking at? Go and do that little bit of research. Is there a solution out there? If there is, fine, buy it if it's within your budget. If not, maybe you need to build some bespoke workflows. That means you need to understand your workflows. So there's that part of the homework that needs to happen, which is, what are your problems? What does the market do? How do you make sense of the market? Because the market is in different, tiers. And know yourself. What are my processes? What are my workflows? So that's the first thing. The second thing is prioritize these different use cases against what's going to give you value, what you can afford, and when are you going to do it. There's no point in doing 25 things and you've only got 10 people and they can't do the 25 things. So prioritization is key, and that gives you a way forward. And then the third way, once you've decided on your top 5 or top whatever number of things that you need to go and do, put adequate resources behind it, test, do it iteratively, engage with real experts, not just LinkedIn armchair experts who can talk, but companies that can actually deliver the thing that you're going to do, and do it iteratively. Make sure you get value, add to it, do it again. If it's broken, stop doing it. If it doesn't work, stop doing it. These seem like fairly simple things that I'm saying, but this is really the playbook for going off and doing this kind of thing.
Would you say some of your clients sometimes would ask you, like, Ashwin, why are you going so slow? Because I feel like you definitely have like a very, very systematic, strategic approach to integrating AI, and I think some of the clients might think, why are we not building this tomorrow? Have they ever asked that, or they always like support your approach?
If you think about what I've just said, I've said identify a problem to 10 problems, 15 problems, wherever they are, prioritize them, put appropriate budget and resource behind them, and then go off and start building. We could do this in a day if we wanted to, right? If the company is relatively small, or we know what the use cases are, we've already had those discussions, we've already got good metrics, because this is good management, right? It's not just AI, this is good management. You've got processes that you understand and they're measurable, and you have success criteria and metrics. Great, we can already work with that. So it doesn't need to take long. With some big businesses, it will take quite a long time to speak with the right stakeholders and find some of these things out. But if you've got everything to hand, then we could start building tomorrow if you had all of the information. So it takes as long as it takes, depending on what your management's like.
It's just everyone wants everything yesterday. This is the problem now in AI. It's like everyone wants it ASAP, but they also want to make sure that it's actually amazing. And that's the problem. Very often those two things really contradict each other.
Well, that's the thing. You can have garbage yesterday, right? Or you can have something that's slightly more thought out tomorrow. When do you want it, right?
No, I agree. As I said, I think, me and you can keep discussing this for hours and hours, but I really appreciate you joining, because to be very honest with you, even I learned, even though I literally, say AI like 100 times a day and I talk to so many people, actually a huge thank you for some of the points and thoughts, because I learned a lot from you as well. So hopefully some of the people who will be watching this will learn a lot more things, new things, very practical things from you too, when it comes to AI space, AI innovation and stuff like that. So yeah, thanks a lot, and talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me. See you soon.
Thanks.